Howdy there, folks. How you doing? Great. So, this is another chat with my pal Stephen Potter. It is quite heavy on the red pill stuff, hardcore truths about society, and he really took me through all this darkness, and he also gives a really good perspective on how can people commit these atrocities. So if you're looking to wake up about what the fuck's been going on around COVID or just our history as a society in America, this is definitely a good video for you. Please like, comment, and share it with people that could use some waking up, perhaps, or just enjoy it yourself. It's all good.
So, as far as today, do you see that the COVID could be a form of depopulation? It was released
in the world. So let me say this in the world of conspiracy theory. Okay.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, this is how this could have played out. Hypothetically, the Chinese, who have been depopulating themselves, especially since the 1950s, in the millions, which is why they had the one-child rule, so you could only have one kid. And if you didn't have a boy, then a lot of them bashed the heads of the girls in and then tried again. So,
wow.
It's a whole thing. So, talk about being undesirable. Women in China were undesirable in the 1950s especially. I mean, it's just like completely crazy. So, I actually started studying Chinese eugenics, and it's not called eugenics over there, but it is absolutely formulating the perfect society in the image of the people that are running it. And that's been going on since Mao and the Cultural Revolution, and it's just awful, okay? But hypothetically, given that after World War II, we would no longer attack each other with atomic bombs. So Japan happened, we dropped an atomic bomb. The atomic bombs that we have now are at least, I want to say 400 times, but I'll say 40. 40 plus times more powerful than the ones that we had in the 40s. So if we dropped an atomic bomb now, we would end the Earth. And it's called assured mutual destruction. So when the Cold War happened, the proxy wars, the United States and Russia never actually directly attacked each other. They fought around each other, so to speak, so that nobody would push the button. So we're in that now, where most of the, like China, Russia, Japan, Brazil, most of the modernized world has atomic weaponry. So we're not going to fight on each other's soil anymore. However, in the 70s, especially in the 70s, it started being economic and subversive. So if I can collapse your economy, I don't need to fire a single bullet. And that's actually how we got the Panama Canal. And I'll get to COVID in a second. But we had Marines went into the Panama area, and this is a grotesque way to shortcut explaining it, but basically said to the people there, "Aren't you guys oppressed?" And they're like, "No." And we're like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "No." And started demonstrations that started its own sort of civil war. And then we liberated them, which was very nice of us. And then we got the rights to the Panama Canal because it was the only way to get trade through, which is why we didn't want anything on the right of it or the left of it, just that channel. And then it was given back to them after the boats and the tankers that we had were too big to go through it. So then we graciously gave it back to them as an act of generosity. Way to go, Carter. So the espionage started becoming information and economics and chemicals. And so what they tested out during the Vietnam War with Agent Orange and stuff like that was it was far more effective to chemically ruin a population than to shoot them. There was just longer implications. So then viruses started happening. So, hypothetically, if China and the United States were in the middle of an economic war right now, hypothetically, and then hypothetically a virus was manufactured in a chemical plant in Wuhan, China, that should not have gotten out for another 2 years because they don't have a vaccine yet, then hypothetically that could have accidentally happened, and then here we are. Maybe.
Yeah. So you think that 2 years from when, I guess since it's been out or since the lockdown, hypothetically is when all this shit will subside?
If it follows the same trajectory as the Spanish flu. So I don't know anything about biochemistry, so I'm not going to pretend to. But what I have understood is that some of the signatures are similar, and it's fairly evident that it's man-made. Now, there's counter arguments to every argument about that, so I have no idea, to tell you the truth. I'm just saying, if you follow the money, right now the United States and China are again in economic conflict. So different, we've put trade sanctions and different embargoes and threatened Hong Kong and all this other stuff that's happened recently. And so I think that it's convenient, so to speak, that while all of that is happening, what's on the front page is all this stuff about the coronavirus, which I think coincides. I don't know if it was deliberate or not. Like, I don't know. What I don't know, or I'm not certain about at all, I'm really not certain about any of it, given how much misinformation is out there right now. But China and the United States after World War II emerged as the major economies and have been vying for number one and number two spot ever since. And so although Russia always seems to throw their 2 cents in there, it tends to be a cog in the wheel more than anything. So I don't know if any of this stuff with Putin is relevant or not, to tell you the truth. I think some of it is stuff to keep us chasing our own paranoia from the Cold War. Because we're not doing anything about it. I mean, it's known that Vladimir Putin has child breeding camps in Russia straight out of the Hitler Youth. It's called the Putin Youth. It's literally picked up the model, moved it to Russia. It's happening right now. And there are people in breeding camps right now that I watched a documentary, several actually, of interviews they ran into some of these kids, 18, 19, 20, 21, that are screwing for the betterment of mankind right now. And they said that it was an honor to carry on the real Russian race, and that they understand the requirements of it. I mean, that stuff is straight out of World War II, and it's happening right now.
Russian kids are breeding with each other to just make more Russians.
Right, but particular kinds and desirable ones. And it's called Putin Youth, just like Hitler Youth. It's happening right now. It's been happening, and nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody cares. So in my world, it really can't be, given that a lot of the genocides are still happening in Russia, and given a lot of it's happening in Siberia, and given a lot of it's still happening, and nobody's saying anything about it, it can't be about that. It's got to be about economics.
Yeah. So is this connected to all the child trafficking stuff that's coming out now?
Maybe. That stuff's been happening since the beginning anyway. And nobody's cared about that either until it started getting public and there were names attached to it that we knew. But people have been trafficked sexually for thousands of years. It was the earliest trade in many regards. So, a lot of it is just that we're all home right now and bored. And so people are starting to notice different things. But Kansas City is still one of the international sex trafficking hubs in the world because you can get anywhere in the world from there. What's it called? My mom was actually a part of. There's a farm in Kansas where they take women out of sex slavery and take them to this farm so that they can rehabilitate them into being people. Some of them don't even remember how to eat. No males are allowed anywhere on the property because they're so traumatized and have been treated like cattle for so long that they don't even remember their own names. So none of that's new. People are just noticing, oh, it's got a celebrity's name attached to it or a rich person's name attached to it. And I'm not saying anything about Epstein. I'm not taking away from the horrors of that and the deep implications of that. But they've been busting up sex trafficking rings. The FBI has been going after that stuff for the better part of 50 years. So none of that's new.
What do you think? What are the? Because it's not easy for the FBI to like go after them. Like people are trying to get them away. What's this aversion to stopping child trafficking?
Honestly,
Wanting to.
Sex is about power. Money is about power. Land is about power. Prestige is about power. Perceived power, anyway. So, if you think about it on a fundamental level, it's the ultimate, don't tell me I can't do that. And if people aren't people anyway, and they're disposable, then who cares?
Yeah.
So it's God complex on crack.
Yeah.
And if you've ever felt invincible, even for one moment, imagine being able to live like that. If you have enough money, power, blackmail, influence, if you look at all of the major fallouts of all of the major dictators ever, they really did think at one point they were invincible. And most of them thought that their God was on their side, frankly. I mean, the Nazis a lot of them considered themselves to be Christians. And God was on their side. You know, whatever version of God people had, they had it that they were right and that God was on their side and that they had every right to do what they were doing or they wouldn't have done it. And it's really what it means to be human right now in terms of being separate, disconnected, and more important or less important than the person next to you. Think about all the comparisons that we have. You know, if you're tall, you know, if you've got money, you play basketball, you don't play basketball, you're a nerd, you have a high IQ. All of those social traits that we place such high value were started with a ranking system in the 1900s. Not that it always hasn't been that way. Because if you think about the tribesmen, et cetera, it's like whoever was the biggest, ate the best, bred the most. And it's all power, and it always has been. It just changes forms.
Yeah. Jesus.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. And I really do acknowledge you for even having the conversation, because most people will never hear about this in their lifetime, and they'll die without knowing that much of their life was pre-orchestrated by dead people.
Yeah, all this social conditioning and all these rules that we have are just made up from people, you know, hundreds of years ago that we have no idea who they were, and it doesn't serve us, and it's just brainwashing.
Yep.
So.
And deliberate.
And deliberate. There it is, folks. You heard the man. Yeah, it was a bit of a heavy conversation. Hope you're doing okay. Hope you can maybe watch a video of some puppies and some kittens playing around. That might help. Yeah, so this is all according to him. He's got all the facts and all the research. If you have any gripes, let me know. I'm happy to reach out to him and he can apply me with the correct evidence to back up all of what he said. So there you go. Hope you got some value out of it. I definitely got something out of having that conversation. More to come. Hope you guys have a nice one. Take care of yourselves, folks. I love you. Peace.